It powered America's farms, towed its broken dreams, and outlasted engines 10 times its price. But buried in its cast-iron heart lies a secret racing pedigree so explosive, Ford tried to hide it. This is the shocking truth behind the engine mechanics called God's anvil, and why all other engines feared it. Birth of a legend. The Ford 300's story begins not on a racetrack, but in the trenches. By 1964, Ford needed an engine for its booming F-Series trucks, something brutal, simple, and unstoppable. Enter engineer Chase Morsey Jr., Ford Advanced Engine Design Lead, and his team. Their mandate: build an engine that could pull stumps, run on ditch water, and survive Armageddon. In the post-war automotive boom of the late 1940s and early 1950s, as America's economy roared back to life, drivers wanted bigger, more capable vehicles. Ford recognized a growing market not just for cars, but for trucks that could haul heavier loads over long distances. To power these machines, the company needed an engine that was simple, durable, and capable of producing strong low-end torque rather than just high-rev horsepower. At the time, Ford's flathead V8s were popular, but they weren't the most efficient or cost-effective option for work vehicles. Straight-six engines had long been valued for their smoothness and mechanical balance, and Ford had already been building smaller inline-six motors for cars. The challenge was creating a larger, more robust version that could power both full-size sedans and light to medium-duty trucks. In the early 1950s, Ford engineers began refining their six-cylinder designs. They wanted an engine with fewer moving parts than a V8, which would reduce production costs and make maintenance easier. Straight sixes also had a narrower profile, which made them easier to package in a variety of chassis. More importantly, the inline configuration's long crankshaft and even firing order meant excellent torque delivery at low RPM, perfect for towing, hauling, and everyday utility work. The first big step came with the introduction of the 215 and 223 cubic inch inline sixes in the mid-1950s. These engines quickly gained a reputation for reliability, but Ford was not done evolving the concept. By the early 1960s, heavier trucks and vans were becoming more common, and Ford needed an even tougher power plant. That demand set the stage for the Ford 240 and, eventually, the now legendary 300 cubic inch inline six. Introduced in 1965, the 300 wasn't just a scaled-up version of the earlier sixes. It was designed from the ground up with heavy-duty service in mind. Its long 4.00-inch stroke gave it stump-pulling torque, while its rugged block, 7 main bearings, and forged crankshaft allowed it to survive extreme abuse. Ford positioned the 300 inline six as the heart of its truck lineup, from F-Series pickups to industrial equipment. Its simplicity appealed to fleet operators and mechanics, who could keep it running for decades with basic tools. Farmers, construction crews, and tradesmen came to trust it as an engine that would start in any weather, run under load all day, and ask for little in return. The creation of the Ford Inline 6 was not about chasing performance headlines or building something flashy. It was born out of necessity, a practical answer to the demands of working Americans in an era when trucks were becoming essential to both business and daily life. Its straightforward design, low cost of ownership, and legendary durability made it a cornerstone of Ford's reputation in the truck market for over 25 years. In short, the Ford Inline 6 came to life because Ford listened to its customers. They didn't just want an engine, they wanted a partner they could count on for the long haul. The result was an unassuming workhorse that became one of the most respected engines in American automotive history. Mechanics lore. We called it the million-mile motor or Big Six, recalls Bud Moore, legendary NASCAR crew chief. While Ford sold V8s, a rebellion brewed in garages. Hot rodders saw the 300's potential, the ultimate act of defiance, strapping on. 2 4-barrel carbs. It was engineering heresy. Manifold Mavericks, Clifford Performance, and Offenhauser made rare, expensive intakes. Finding one felt like uncovering pirate gold, said Mike Davidson. At its core, a 2x4 system involves two 4-barrel carburetors feeding the engine through a specially designed intake manifold. This is a rare sight on an inline-six. Most people associate dual quads with muscle car V8s like the 409 Chevy, 426 Hemi, or Ford's own 427. Seeing such a setup on a long, narrow, straight six is not only unusual, but immediately attention-grabbing. The most fundamental benefit of the 2x4 setup is increased airflow. The Ford 300's long stroke and robust bottom end mean it can move a lot of air and fuel, but the stock 1-barrel or 2-barrel carburetors restrict its breathing, especially at higher RPM. By adding two smaller 4-barrel carbs, each feeding 3 cylinders through a balanced plenum, you dramatically increase the volume of air the engine can inhale. More air means more fuel can be burned efficiently, which translates directly into more horsepower, particularly in the mid to high RPM range where the stock engine starts to run out of breath. Of course, airflow alone isn't the whole story. A proper 2x4 conversion requires a special intake manifold. These are often custom-made or sourced from rare aftermarket suppliers, as Ford never offered a dual-quad manifold for the 300 from the factory. The manifold must be carefully engineered to ensure equal distribution of the air-fuel mixture to each cylinder, preventing lean or rich conditions that could harm performance or reliability. Carburetor selection is equally important. While it might be tempting to bolt on the largest 4 barrels you can find, the key is balance. Most successful 2x4 builds on the 300 use smaller carbs, often in the 390 to 450 range, so the total airflow is increased without overwhelming the engine at low speeds. This also helps maintain good throttle response and drivability, making the setup usable on the street as well as at the track. Tuning is the next critical step. Dual carburetors must be synchronized so that they open at the same rate and deliver the same amount of fuel under all conditions. Some builders run both carbs together progressive linkage, while others use a staged approach where one carb handles most of the light load work and the second opens only under heavy throttle. Either way, fine-tuning the jetting, idle mixture, and accelerator pump action is essential to extract the maximum benefit from the setup. When combined with other performance modifications, such as a hotter camshaft, free-flowing headers, and an upgraded ignition system, a 2x4 equipped Ford 300 can produce significantly more power than stock while retaining its legendary torque curve. The dual carbs help the engine breathe better at high RPM, while the long stroke ensures that low-end pulling power remains strong. Beyond the performance gains, the visual appeal of a dual-quad inline-six cannot be overstated. Pop the hood at a car show or drag strip, and you're guaranteed to draw a crowd. The sight of two polished carburetors sitting atop a long, gleaming intake with fuel lines neatly routed and linkage exposed gives the engine a mechanical artistry that's pure old-school hot rodding. In the end, adding a 2x4 intake system to the Ford 300 inline-six is as much about personality as it is about power. It's a statement that you're willing to take the road less traveled to build something unique that defies expectations. The result is a potent, distinctive engine that blends the torque and durability of the 300 with the high-performance swagger of a dual-quad setup, a combination that turns an already respected workhorse into an unforgettable piece of machinery. Driver's addiction. It wasn't peaky like a V8, said Dick Brannon, SCCA Rally Champ 1978 F100. The torque hit you like a sledgehammer off idle. You could feel every cubic inch working. It pulled like a freight train, never quit. The unlikely racing glory. This truck engine didn't belong on the track until it started winning. The shocking victories. Circle track. Dominance. In NASCAR's late-model Sportsman Series, 1970s, underdog teams used the 300 for its torque advantage on short tracks and durability. Driver. Jack Ingram, the Iron Man. Reportedly tested one, noting, "It wouldn't rev high, but it hooked up coming off the corners when the V8s were spinning." Ingram team records mention testing Ford 6s in 1973. Drag racing sleeper. Ohio George Montgomery, famous AA gasser builder, experimented with Ford 6s. While not his primary, he noted, "That 300 block, cast iron fortress. With booster juice, it wouldn't split like a V8. Truck pull titans, became the king of budget pullers. Why blow up expensive V8s? Said puller." Dirty, Dan Wilkins, 1978. The 308 abuse made torque down low where you needed it and cost pennies to fix. But to truly take advantage of this added flow, the engine benefits immensely from 3 other performance enhancements: the right camshaft, a set of free-flowing headers, and a strong ignition system. In stock form, the Ford 300's camshaft is designed for low RPM efficiency and smooth operation, which is ideal for work duty but leaves performance potential untapped. Installing a performance camshaft tailored to the engine's intended use transforms how it behaves. For a dual quad setup, a cam with longer duration and higher lift allows the valves to stay open longer and further, letting in more of the increased air-fuel mixture supplied by the carburetors. This increases high RPM breathing capacity, letting the engine rev more freely and produce more power in the mid to upper RPM range without sacrificing too much low-end torque. However, cam selection is a balancing act. Too radical a grind will shift the torque curve too high, making the engine less friendly for street driving. Many builders opt for a torque cam with a broad power band, ensuring the 300 keeps its legendary low-end pull while waking up the top end perfect for trucks that need to perform on the road and at the drag strip. Headers, letting the engine exhale. If the carburetors and camshaft improve how the engine breathes in, headers improve how it breathes out. The factory cast iron exhaust manifolds on the 300 are restrictive, designed for durability rather than flow. A quality set of tuned long tube headers opens up the exhaust path, reducing back pressure and allowing spent gases to exit more efficiently. This is especially important for an engine with a dual quad setup. Without sufficient exhaust flow, the extra intake air and fuel can't be fully utilized, leading to a bottleneck. Long tube headers improve scavenging, where the momentum of exhaust gases helps pull fresh air-fuel mixture into the cylinders, which complements a performance cam and high-flow intake beautifully. For a Ford 300, some custom header work may be necessary, especially if the vehicle has tight engine bay clearances, but the gains in horsepower, torque, and throttle response are well worth the effort. Ignition upgrades, lighting the fire. With more air and fuel entering the engine, it's critical to ensure that the mixture is ignited reliably and at the correct time. The factory ignition system, while adequate for stock power levels, can fall short when the demands increase. Upgrading to a high-energy ignition or modern electronic ignition provides a hotter, more consistent spark, ensuring complete combustion even under heavy load and at higher RPM. Adjustable timing control allows fine-tuning for the increased airflow and compression, helping extract every bit of performance without detonation issues. High-performance spark plug wires, quality plugs gapped correctly for the new setup, and a strong coil all contribute to smoother operation, quicker starts, and more efficient power delivery. The combined effect: more power without losing torque. The beauty of upgrading a Ford 300 with dual quads, camshaft, headers, and ignition improvements is that these modifications work together in harmony. The dual quad setup increases the intake volume. The camshaft optimizes valve timing to use that air-fuel charge effectively. The headers clear exhaust gases efficiently. And the ignition lights the mixture with precision and power. When done right, the result is an engine that can push well beyond its original factory horsepower, sometimes by 50% or more, while retaining, and in some cases even enhancing, its famous torque curve. Instead of a narrow, peaky power band, you get strong pull from low RPM all the way to the higher rev range, making the engine versatile for both work and play. Most enthusiasts chasing horsepower start with a V8, but building a performance inline-six like the Ford 300 is an exercise in mechanical creativity and individuality. The long, narrow engine bay presence of a straight six with dual quads, chrome air cleaners, and braided fuel lines is pure visual drama. It's an engine that doesn't just perform. It tells a story of old-school ingenuity and a willingness to go against the grain. For those who appreciate torque as much as horsepower, the upgraded Ford 300 is an unbeatable combination. It's a power plant that can cruise comfortably, tow confidently, and still surprise people at a stoplight or on the drag strip. In the end, adding the right camshaft, headers, and ignition upgrades to a dual quad, Ford 300 inline-six transforms a dependable workhorse into a genuine performance contender, one that keeps its deep, muscular torque while waking up the top end in a way few would expect from a straight six. It's proof that with the right parts and tuning, the 300 can be both a torque monster and a head-turner. Mechanics dubbed it God's Anvil for its indestructibility. The silent war inside Ford and the coming doom. But the 300's success hid a dark reality. Ford's V8 divisions saw it as a threat. Worse, emissions regulations were strangling the simple carbureted engine. The greater conflict, corporate sabotage? Rumors persist that V8-focused executives starved the six of R&D funds. We begged for fuel injection development for the 300 in 1982, claimed retired engineer Frank Miller, Ford Powertrain, in a 2005 forum Q&A. They said, "Put it in a V8." Unverified but widely reported in enthusiast circles. Emissions, stranglehold. The 300's simple design struggled with nitrogen and carbon LLM standards. Horsepower plummeted to 120 horsepower by 1985. For those who see value in the unexpected, building a high-performance Ford 6 is a statement. It's not about following the well-worn path of dropping in a small block or big block V8. Instead, it's about taking something designed for work trucks, generators, and industrial equipment and showing the world what it can do when given the same attention and resources as a traditional performance platform. This underdog charm stems from the 300's history. From 1965 until the mid-1990s, it powered countless Ford trucks, vans, and even some specialty vehicles. It was designed to pull hard from low RPM, not to spin fast or win races. But its stout construction, 7 main bearings, a forged steel crankshaft, and a long stroke design means it's capable of handling far more power than Ford ever intended. When enthusiasts bolt on performance parts like a 2x4 dual-quad carburetor setup, performance camshaft, headers, and upgraded ignition, they're not just making it faster. They're rewriting the narrative of what a Ford inline-six can be. There's something deeply satisfying about watching jaws drop when the hood comes up to reveal a gleaming high-flow intake feeding 2 carburetors, or hearing the unmistakable deep exhaust note of a tuned 6 that sounds nothing like a V8. Part of the appeal is the mechanical curiosity involved. Because the aftermarket for the Ford 300 is smaller than for a Ford 302 or Chevy 350, builders often have to get creative, adapting parts from other platforms, fabricating custom components, or tracking down rare vintage speed equipment. It's a build that rewards ingenuity, resourcefulness, and a willingness to experiment. There's also an old-school hot-rodding ethos at play. In the early days of hot rodding, enthusiasts worked with whatever they could find, whether it was a Ford flathead V8, a Chevy Stovebolt 6, or even an inline engine from a farm truck. The goal was to squeeze every ounce of performance from an unlikely source, and in many ways, the Ford 300 build carries on that tradition in the modern era. When done right, a performance-built Ford 300 doesn't just hold its own. It stands out in a crowd of cookie-cutter V8 swaps. At a cruise-in or drag event, people gather around not because it's the fastest car there, but because it's different, and because it shows that speed and style can come from unexpected places. Ultimately, the appeal of building a Ford 300 inline-six into a high-performance engine lies in its ability to surprise. It's the joy of proving that a so-called work truck motor can be refined into a torque-rich, visually striking powerhouse. It's about taking the road less traveled and finding pride in creating something both functional and unique. A machine that blends old-school ingenuity with modern performance know-how, turning the humble workhorse into a head-turning statement of individuality. The Loyalists' last stand, small shops like Leo Santucci's six-cylinder specialties, kept racing hopes alive with wild turbo builds. We ran 12s in a 78 Econoline van, scared the hell out of Camaros, Santucci told CarCraft, 1989. What if? Perhaps the most striking part of the Ford 300's racing legacy is how it thrived in underdog situations. Builders weren't choosing it because it was the easy path. They were choosing it because it defied convention. Victories in small-town tracks and regional events cemented its place as a sleeper powerhouse. And yet, as impressive as its grassroots racing history is, one secret build, rumored to be the most powerful Ford 300 ever. Ford killed the 300 in 1996. The official reason? Emissions and progress. But whispers persist of a lost project. Rumors swirled for decades. A secret Ford skunkworks project, codenamed Atlas. A twin-turbo, fuel-injected 300, targeting 400-plus pounds-feet torque for a new Super Duty line. Killed in 1992. Was it too powerful? Too efficient? Did it threaten the V8 empire? The blueprints vanished. The engineers sworn to silence. What if Atlas had lived? Would diesel dominance have been challenged? Would the Anvil have become a performance icon? The truth remains buried. But the legend of the 300 inline-six endures. Because sometimes the greatest engines aren't the loudest. They're the ones you can't kill. This is Paul from Rare Car Stories. Catch you next time.